Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am excited to introduce Denise Cope, president of Affordable Degrees Abroad, and she's going to talk today about graduate degrees abroad for CU Denver students.
All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm Denise Cope. This is going to be really informative. So I want you all to grab your phones because you're probably going to want to snap some shots along the way. So this is really going to give you an overview. And I will say for so many students, this is such an amazing opportunity for students to either continue with sort of an international study abroad focus, or if you've never studied abroad, this is just another way to do it. So before we get started, and while people are still joining, I just wanted to find out where you've studied abroad, and if you haven't studied abroad, if you're part of the 2020 cohort, what were you planning on doing? And if you haven't studied abroad for a variety of reasons. So just sort of jump in there and say what you've done or haven't done. It looks like we're getting a few messages here. So, but anyhow, I know that this is just such a great opportunity for students really to continue and to get a master's degree, usually for less than the US, and abroad. So really quick about me, I'm president of Affordable Degrees Abroad, and I have been in higher education, most of that international education, for 20 years. And on my watch, I've sent 4,000 US students to about 150 universities abroad. So this is something I know, and it's also something I'm passionate about. I myself have lived and worked abroad in France, Turkey, Japan, Morocco, and so this is near and dear to my heart, and I'm hoping to be able to excite you and to get you to be able to continue your career abroad. And my mission really is to be a guide for students and to help you sort through all the choices of doing a degree abroad. So our goals for today, we're going to talk about the value of a master's degree abroad or a PhD. I'm just going to go over some country and university profiles, and also get to financial aid, talking about FAFSA, 529 plans, GI Bill, some scholarships, and then we'll transition to making it happen. Are you a good candidate? What is your next steps? And there's also time for Q&A at the end. All right, so the number one question I always get is, hey, is it really cheaper to do my degree abroad? And the answer is yes, most of the time, but not always. There are still really great deals in the United States. You sort of have to find them, but and there's a whole range of prices abroad. So just to give you a quick overview, it can be everything from $0 tuition for a US student to complete a master's abroad to upward of like 35,000, could even be slightly higher, but $35,000. It's usually right around like 15 to 17, 18, that's sort of the sweet spot, but there's everything in between here. The more expensive ones tend to be in Sydney and in London. So that's my number one question. The number two question I always get is, hey, are these real degrees? And yes, so here's the thing that I think a lot of US students and families don't know, is that there are really prestigious institutions abroad. And I think we're really familiar with US News and World Report sort of as that ranking system. But if you look at either QS or Times Higher Ed, these are sort of ranking systems to really see where these institutions rank in the world, and that includes the United States. But a lot of these are highly ranked institutions around the world. And what's also really cool about master's degrees are many of these are in English, even in countries that are not English speaking. And so you will find, I'll just like throw out a few things. Like in Germany, there's around 1,600 master's degree programs in English. Netherlands, primarily in English. Turkey, all of their university systems are in English. And you'll find some also in China, and some programs in France too. So there's actually quite a few programs that are in English. Now, of course, because you're here, I know that all of you want to develop your global skills and network. And this is one of the, I'd say, one of the key things. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a hiring manager at a very large aerospace company here in Denver. And he was saying he likes to hire students who've done their master's abroad because he knows that they then have the global skills and he can throw them into some complex international teams and they can get the job done.
Denise, that's
And
so true from our world too, where we see people, in fact, going back as far as 10, 15 years, employers would look for a combination of an undergrad one place and a grad one place. So if you're an American, you're going to want to do your undergrad here and your grad someplace else and vice versa. That's a powerful combination.
yeah, it is powerful. And what a lot of people don't know too is there are possibilities to work overseas and to gain residency too. And a grad degree abroad can sort of be that first transition point. So for example, there's something called a post-study work visa. Not all countries have this. So if one of your goals is to work overseas, you'll probably want to identify a country that has one of these post-study work visa programs. You start with your master's, and then depending on the country, it's usually 2 to 3 years of work, and then it can transition, it takes time, but it can transition to residency. And I've known some students who have been able to do that too. So the countries that are in that category are Canada, UK, Ireland, New Zealand, Australia. I think that's it. There's some other ones out there too, but they're for a shorter time period. So these are generally around 2 or 3 years. And so just really quick, this is just some helpful language. Sometimes you'll see the word course structure that just would mean a master's program structure. Most master's programs are 1 year. And so when I say 1 year, it's usually 12 months and it is full on, like there's no messing around, like you're in a full on master's program. PhDs tend to be around 3-year programs. And you usually have to, you're very focused with these. And for a lot of countries, there's industry experience that's incorporated. Now you're going to see language when you start doing some sleuthing that's called research versus taught versus applied. So I just want to orient you to this language so you feel more comfortable as you're searching. So taught programs is probably if you're choosing a taught master's, this is the one most US students are going to feel more comfortable with. It's usually around 9 months of classes, and then you've got 3 months of research for writing your master's thesis. Now, there's also something called a research master's where it's full on research, no classes. I wouldn't like that. I'd say most US students are like, I want classes. So you're probably going to be looking for taught. Keep in mind, PhDs are fully research-based. So there's really no classes. You come in, you know what you want to study, what you're researching, and you find your supervisor. So it has a slightly different process than here in the US. And then sometimes you will see, like in Netherlands and Germany, you're going to see things called applied universities. And these are not research focused, and you probably won't find them in QS or Times Higher Ed, but they're really, really good for students that want more hands-on learning and are more experiential. And a lot of these have strong industry ties. They may not, and they're not going to be as research focused. They may be using some of the research, but it's really about the application. Okay, now, I always get the question around, how do I pay for all of this? So good news and bad news. The good news is FAFSA does apply for around 400 international universities, and they accept FAFSA loans. Does not work for work study or for Pell Grants, but FAFSA loans. These universities tend to be around $15,000 and more in tuition cost as a general rule of thumb. If they're below that, many of these universities haven't gone through the extensive FAFSA process. But in some cases, right, you're paying $3,000 a year. So, save up so you don't take on any debt. So 529 plans also work abroad for the same institutions that accept FAFSA loans. So many students have these funds and they can then apply them to these institutions abroad. Now, GI Bill, what's exciting in the Weems database, there are a number of institutions. I haven't done the math. I'm just going to say 500, but I could be making that up because I haven't counted them all. But there's a lot of institutions in the Weems database abroad. And the good news is if your preferred institution is not listed there, it's student driven. So you can make a request to have it approved and go through that approval process. I know in the past I've been told it's 2 months. It may be longer, I don't know. But I know it is possible to get things that are not on the Weems database approved. And I've got more articles, and if you want to do a deeper dive, and you can visit my blog, and I go over FAFSA and 529 college plans. All right, so this is sort of fun. I just like talking about all the awesome possibilities of doing things abroad. And literally, I just chose a few, and I could have chosen different ones as well. But I just sort of want to give you an idea so I can like whet your appetite, and then you get excited about, oh, I can do this. So Germany, for US students, it's free or nearly free. And by nearly free, I mean, it's around 3,000 US dollars, which a year. And that's, free by our standards. And there are 1,600 master's programs that are in English in Germany. So there are a lot, and there's really wonderful, prestigious institutions here. And so it's everything from LMU, which is based in Germany, to, top 100 institution in the whole world, to some applied institutions as well. So there's just a whole range of things here in Germany. The Netherlands is a very popular country, I've noticed, for US students. Tuition tends to range between $15,000 and $18,000 a year. And there are a lot of prestigious institutions. So it's everything from TU Delft to Leiden to Maastricht to Utrecht. And they've got really, I'd say, interesting, exciting programs in English. And what I like about Netherlands, I feel like it's slightly more easy to navigate than Germany. Germany, at least the public system, you have to build your resiliency to figure out a lot of things. I think Netherlands would probably be a slightly easier transition for a US student. New Zealand is another super popular option, especially for Colorado students. And in fact, there are 4 universities in the Netherlands that take FAFSA. And so these institutions are Otago, Massey, Auckland, and Victoria University of Wellington. And tuition generally is going to be $17,000 to $22,000 a year. They do offer some scholarships per program, but these are somewhat limited for international students. But they all take FAFSA. And I should mention Netherlands, some of the universities also take FAFSA. Germany does not, but they do offer deferment if you have current loans. All right, and then if you've not, oh wait, before this, okay, New Zealand, this is the exciting thing about doing a PhD in New Zealand. So if you're thinking about doing a PhD, you should totally consider New Zealand, because you're charged domestic student rates. And so this is basically 5,000 to 6,000 a year. It's usually a 3-year program. And what's great also about New Zealand is it comes with a 3-year work visa afterwards. So think about it, right? You do your master's in like 1 or 2 years, and then you've got this lovely 3-year visa to stay there and work afterwards. And you can also bring your spouse and children.
So question about that, Denise. So is the 3-year work visa for both a master's and a PhD?
And an undergrad, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of New Zealand, and I feel like it's a easier transition, I'd say, for a US student in regards to the educational system. And, you know, I say, because it's New Zealand and there's mountains, I think Coloradans, we just love that. And all right, Erasmus Plus is something that I think is very exciting. And I don't know if you've heard of it or not. Erasmus refers to, without the plus, refers to sort of that study abroad, sort of free study abroad in the EU for EU citizens. Now, we are not EU citizens, so we are not part of Erasmus, but they have added Erasmus Plus, and we are eligible for this. And the way it works is there are, every year it's around 150, and they're very specialized master's programs that get published. And it changes up every now and again. It's not always the same list. But these are fully funded joint master's programs. So it is a collaboration usually between 2 or 3 institutions in Europe. And you, as a student or in a cohort for that program, would be required to go to 2 of the countries. So you do the first year in one country, second year in the other country, and then you end up with this, in some cases, you have 2 different transcripts, but it's a joint master's program. And it's everything from sciences to linguistics, to psychology. It has sort of everything in there, but again, it's very specific. Some are more competitive than others, and I will say also some are more, I'd say, well organized than others. Some you've really got to be able to handle a lot of ambiguity. And so usually if I'm working with a student who's considering an Erasmus Plus program, what we do is we look at every year who the organizing university is, because that then tells you, oh, will this be maybe easy to navigate or not? So, so those are some of the tips, but it's an amazing, I'd say amazing program. It is prestigious. You end up with a joint master's degree. All right, so is a degree abroad the right fit for you? So I usually ask students these 4 questions. Number 1 is, do you have a clear vision on what you want to study? And this has to be a yes. If you're sort of like, well, I could do this or this, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it afterwards, it can be, you sometimes just sort of go down a rabbit hole that might not be useful for you. So you want to make sure you've got that inner clarity, at least the best as you can, right? You're never going to have 100% clarity, but you want to have as much clarity as possible so you can find the right program. Do you want to develop intercultural communication competency and a global network? And the answer should be yes to this one. And then, are you a resilient problem solver? And the reason I always ask this question is not only are you going to be thrown lots of things that, you know, culturally you're not maybe as comfortable with and know how to solve. So you have to have that cultural resiliency. But a lot of these institutions, I would say their systems are very different. And they also are going to treat you like an adult. So they're going to expect you to be able to problem solve. And I'd say and it can be overwhelming, right? So I think you just have to ask yourself, you know, can I handle it? Is that something I want to grow with? And then, are you a self-motivated learner who can handle lectures or independent research? There tends to be, for all master's programs, but especially abroad, more sort of independent work and independent research. So making sure that that feels like, oh yeah, that's what I want. So if you've answered 3 or 4 yeses here, that's probably a good green light for you to move forward. Now, if you're in the 1 or 2 category, don't freak out. It could just be a conversation to have either with me or with one of your advisors, and to see, is there a way to scaffold skills to get you where you need to be? All right, so I want to give you some concrete next steps. I'd say if you're really serious about this, you want to make sure you've got 5 programs that you can apply to. So how on earth are you going to discover where these 5 programs are? So there's a few ways. One is you can attend webinars. This is an example of webinar. I'll showcase some webinars I have coming up. I give webinars on, usually it has a country theme, so it could be Ireland or UK, New Zealand. I have one coming up for France and Italy. So just to familiarize yourself with different countries and different universities abroad. You can also search some databases. The ones that I recommend at the master's level, one is study.eu. This is really only for universities in the EU and in the UK. The other one is mastersportal.com. And these can just be helpful guides to sort of discover the breadth. It can be really hard then to narrow down because probably there will be hundreds. So how do you narrow down from there? And then finally, you can ask a guide. You can ask your study abroad advisors. I'm available. I'll give you my contact information as well. So that's step 1. Then you also need to find out, do I meet the entry requirements? What's great about a lot of these programs is many of them don't require the GRE. So that's really exciting, but they're going to they're going to look for, is your undergrad relevant to what you want to study at the grad level? And then some also are going to find out, do you have the experience to be competitive? Some programs require a little bit more experience than others. So find out what those entry requirements are. And then look to the finances. What is the total cost? So it's tuition and living expenses. Will you need FAFSA 529, GI Bill, private loans? And then finally, ask the university about scholarships, particularly universities that are priced at $15,000 and higher are going to have scholarships available. So make sure you're asking about what is available so at least you can apply. All right, so here are a few things just in case you need to get in touch with me. You can send an email. You could also schedule a discovery call. So I offer a free 20-minute call with students just to brainstorm. And then if you haven't done it yet, please immediately download my graduate guide abroad. Go to my website, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see it. What I do is I walk you through different countries and sort of pros and cons. And the other thing I want you to do is I've got some upcoming live events. So these are webinars where I work with universities. So I've got one coming up on Feb 17th, and it's sustainability in Ireland. And this is everything from like environmental science or climate science to climate policy. So how do we, move sort of the government needle around issues around climate, and also sustainable business. So there's a lot in here. And then on March 3rd, I've got one coming up with some New Zealand universities. These are the universities that take FAFSA. And you can register for these by going to affordabledegreesabroad.com/events. They're all free and just a service to you, so you can figure out what works for you and what makes sense, or at least to whet your appetite. All right, so I've reserved some time at the end to see if there are any questions out there.
Thank you so much, Denise. This has been really helpful. I do have a question for you. So the cost for the universities, is that tuition only, or do they ever include housing in their costs?
Yeah, not usually. Even at the undergrad level, it's separate.
Okay.
So, but especially at the grad level. So, and it ranges, right? So there is a really helpful cost of living tool that then you can, look at the difference between, for example, Denver and whatever city it is, just to see, is it comparable? Is it less expensive? Is it more expensive? So I definitely suggest you do that. Most universities offer some assistance with housing, not financial assistance, but they'll help you either with apartment rentals or some student housing rentals as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess another question I have, do you know if some programs are more competitive than others, like certain focuses are more competitive than others?
Well, I wonder if I can show you something here. Yeah, I'm going to stop share and do something really quick, okay? Just a second here. So the answer is yes, because, like everything, there's going to be programs that are more competitive than others. So let me share this, and just to give you an idea. So this is Times Higher Ed World University Rankings. So let me go to, they have 2021 here. No. Okay. So, good. I can't get rid of this. Oh, no. All right.
Remind me later, it looks like in the top right.
Why does it say that?
Oh.
It's making me log in or register, and I don't want to do either. So, darn it. Well, if you go to Times Higher Ed, then normally it does not make me do this. But what I was trying to get you to see is, like, Oxford tends to be near the top, right? So, hey, guess what? Oxford's always going to be competitive. But the reality is, like, Oxford would be a terrible place for me to study, even if I really wanted to, for prestigious reasons, because I'm more of an applied learner, and it just wouldn't be a great fit for me. But you'll see there's some US schools in here. But then you'll start to see where things can start to get more competitive. So usually if you're in the top 20 in the world, you're going to be really competitive. But again, it depends on the program. So for example, I know there's a program at TU Delft. So this is a technology university in Netherlands. And their programs they're small cohort. So those can get competitive if it's a smaller cohort. But I do suggest checking out Times Higher Ed. And then what you'll do is look, I just usually do overall, but then you can do by region or by subject. So you can choose, and if you don't find your exact subject, find one that's close enough. And this will give you then a sense of what are the top universities in the world for my field.
I have a couple questions. First of all, is there any data that shows how it improves your earning potential?
For doing an abroad degree?
Yeah, graduate.
I have not seen that data. I know somebody who, if there's a person who has it, I can reach out to him and find out if he knows of it. I've not seen it. So all of my information is more anecdotal.
And how do you find out if any of these universities also have semester abroad programs?
Well,
for undergrad?
Yeah, I mean, you have to start with your study abroad office, because even if they offer an undergrad study abroad, your university may not accept it.
Okay,
I know
good
every
answer.
university is a little different. Yeah, but I was so blessed working at DU. So a lot of these partnerships and relationships I know from study abroad. So I also know I know the backstory here. I know this, type of student can do really well here, or here are the type of supports at this institution.
One of the other things that would be interesting to have data on, but I'm not asking you this, is how many of the students that study abroad for their graduate program end up marrying somebody from that country. Because I have met dozens and dozens of people. In fact, the head of the Australian Defence Force married an American girl that they met at Oxford, studying abroad for their graduate degrees. And in the Foreign Service, easily 40%, maybe 50% of Foreign Service officers end up marrying a foreigner, which is like their first time, overseas. So it's a risk or a benefit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I don't know if there's any data on that, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
So pick your country carefully.
Yeah. Any last questions that I can help you with?
I guess, what are some of the other common questions that you receive from the students that you advise?
Usually they're so specific. I keep thinking there's going to be a theme here in regards to what students want to study abroad, like what their subject area is for their master's. And honestly, it has been so all over the map that I've not developed a theme. It's been everything from neuroscience to cybersecurity to, some humanities, psychology, policy. I've been surprised by that, the breadth, but I've also been really excited because it's been sort of equal men and women that are interested. And I think, if you just look at data for study abroad, I forget what the latest stat is, but it was around 60 or 65% were women. And here I'm noticing at the master's level, that's sort of leveling out. And I think it's because instead of trying to fit it in, it's like, oh, this is like, I can do my whole degree abroad, right? And so I've noticed a lot more in the sciences now.
That's really interesting. Huh. Well, that's cool. Well, once you start having a theme, let us know what are some of the things that we should be looking out for.
Yeah, well, I just did one with, did a webinar with Ireland for tech, because, you know, Ireland is sort of like the Silicon Valley of Europe. And I was so amazed and impressed by not only what the industry around Ireland, and especially Dublin, around tech, but also the intentionality of the institution to work to help students find a job and gain industry experience. I was so impressed by that. So certainly for a tech industry, I would definitely check out Ireland. I think that's really...
This was fascinating, Denise. Thank you very much. I really feel like I want to rush out there and help you market this. Would it be possible to get a copy of your presentation, or is that kind of trademarked?
I mean, I wouldn't want you to like send it out to people, but I can certainly pass, give it to you so you could, or I could share it with you.
People, we could open it up just to ourselves, maybe.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. And this recording is certainly available to any student who wants it.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Denise. This has been really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm super enthused by it. I feel like it's such, I'd say more and more US students are headed in this direction.
And what great destinations for you to have to go do quality control on.
Right? Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.